overarching plan to learn all of your major scales, there are 12 of them. There are lots of different fingering patterns, and there are many different ways we could approach this. I'm going to talk you through a plan to learn them in the simplest to most difficult order. And this is not necessarily in an order that goes around the circle of fifths or kind of makes sense logically as far as learning how the flats and sharps work. It's more about learning how to play with your fingers, like coordinating with each other, how to learn how to play with your hands together and all of that. So this is maybe an unconventional way to teach scales. It's not the way I was taught, but I think it makes more sense to learn how to play scales fluently with your hands together and get going with the easiest ones first, and then gradually make it more and more complicated and a little bit more tricky. So the order I would like to teach you to do scales, starting with right hand B major. Going up. Left hand B major, going down. Okay, and then we learn C major. Going up and down with the right hand, and then going down and up with the left hand. Okay, after you've learned B major with right hand alone, left hand alone, you've learned C major with right hand alone and left hand alone. This is almost immediately, and this is for a very beginning student. It's okay if you've never played piano before. I would give this contrary motion as the first introduction to hands together. So starting with middle C, both thumbs on middle C. Going out and back in. Okay, I'm gonna break each of these down, have little videos explaining each one of these steps. Right now, this is just an overview. So if you're feeling like, whoa, 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 slow down, that's because I will, don't worry. This is just telling you the whole process, okay? So C major, contrary motion. Wow, you've got your hands moving together. You have your thumbs crossing, going out, coming back in. The next thing I would do is return to that B major scale and learn how to play hands in parallel motion. 4 octaves up and down the scale. So we start with the thumbs and go all the way up and down the keyboard, figuring out how to coordinate both hands together. And I have lessons about all of these things, okay? All right, after we do B major, C major, then we put hands together, contrary motion and parallel motion. The next one I want to introduce is how to do hands together in parallel motion using F major. F major is kind of like a bridge. F major is actually a unique scale. It's the only one where it's primarily white keys, but we have our thumbs crossing at the same time. And that's why we want to do this one next. To get the fingering pattern secure, I really like to do all 4 octaves. So we're going to do F major, 4 octaves, up and down. Your thumbs are playing the same notes, F and C, and that's why that is the next one. That's how we can get our hands coordinated together. All right, so you learn how to play with your hands together in the easiest scales. And then you transfer what you learned with B major to several other places. So I would go next from the F major, I would go to black key scales. Okay, so we've already done B major. Now we say, guess what? This is easy. It's a pattern where you've got your 2s on the 2 black keys and your 3s on the 3 black keys. You can start anywhere with the same pattern. So then we do C sharp major and F sharp major. And that, again, just gets you more practice moving all the way up and down the keyboard, hands together in parallel motion, figuring out how to cross your thumbs underneath. So I do C sharp next, okay, and then F sharp. Now you have a pretty good handle on how to play a scale all the way up and down, how to play with your hands together, how to do your thumb crossings. There's a whole lot of technique and coordination that you've learned with all of these kind of easy peasy scales. At this point, I would introduce tetrachords and 5-finger patterns, just introducing the idea of the half steps, finding the sets of white notes and black notes. So we kind of take a break from all of the 4-octave scales, do all of the tetrachord patterns. So we would learn 5-finger scales in all 12 major keys, and that just kind of gets your head wrapped around the idea that we have these different patterns of whites and blacks, and just gets you a little more familiar and comfortable with playing a variation of sets of black and white keys. Okay, so we've learned how to play the scales with both hands in different directions. We've learned how to cross our thumbs underneath, and now we've learned the 5-finger tetrachord patterns. What do we do next? At this point, there are a lot of ways we could do it. What should we do next? What should we do next? I think at this point we introduce the circle of fifths, and then we start to do it in a more chronological order, okay? So at this point we learn how all of the scales are related to each other, how C major has no sharps, and then G major has 1 sharp. You go up a fifth, D major has 2 sharps, A major has 3 sharps, E major has 4 sharps. Then you get to one you already know, B major has 5 sharps. So, and then B major, F sharp major, and C sharp major you already know. So we can go through all of the sharp scales at this point in the order of the circle of fifths. So, what about learning how to put your right hand and left hand together though? Because you've done that with the easy scales, and now you need to learn how to do that with these scales where your thumbs are not crossing at the same time in the middle. So this is the point where we explain that C major fingering pattern, where your thumbs are going to be taking turns, and we have some exercises to do that. Once we introduce that, then it's the same fingering pattern for G major, D major, E major. All of those scales are all the same fingering pattern, so it makes a lot of sense. From that point, we've learned all of the sharp scales, and then finally we get into the fixed flat scales, and we learn those also in the circle of fifths. I would come back, do we already did C, we already did F, so we do B flat, E flat, A flat, and then at that point you've already done D flat because it's the same as C sharp. So that would be all 12 of your major scales. So that's how I would teach them, from easiest to hardest. We go through first learning how to cross the fingers and put the hands together, then we do all the sharps, and then we do all the flats. Now, if you want lessons for each one of these scales, I'm working on uploading those and teaching those one at a time. So stay tuned.